Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency, 504-556-0809 or davemietteINSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports, live from our Pontchartrain Production Studios. As we go live once again at 1 p.m. It's our new time to go live with this program. And of course, you'll be able to catch us at 6 o'clock tonight in our normal time slot here on WLAE-TV. And as always, got a great guest to break everything down for you as we talk about all the home teams. We'll talk Saints, LSU, Tulane, and Pelicans on today's program. Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports rejoins us on the program. Looking forward to a great hour with Chris. Chris, welcome back to the show. Always good to have you, my friend. And tell the folks about what you guys are doing over at Fox 8. It's wall-to-wall programming once again.
It's all the sports programming you could want. We've got the Black and Gold Review Show Mondays, wrapping up Saints games Tuesday, our Roundtable Overtime Show. We prepare you for the Saints game on Wednesday, obviously Thursday Night Football. Fridays, Fox 8 Football Friday, a really fun high school season. Glad to see that get off the ground. Sundays, we have the Fox 8 Live Tailgate Show getting you previewed again for the Saints game right up until kickoff just about, and then the Final Play, and of course the Final Play app.
Yes.
We've got our Overtime podcast. I do the Extra Point Fantasy Football blog, so a lot going on as always.
No doubt. Now, look, with the blog this year, has it been a little bit more difficult with COVID-19 as far as, again, getting lineups, everything together? Because I'll be honest with you, normally I play every year. The group that I play with, again, they took a hiatus because of the virus.
It's been a little different, and I've kind of addressed it. I put out there the way that I've dealt with game cancellations. I run a league or two, and so what I've done is, just kind of tell people, look, if a game's going to get canceled last minute, if we have like a notice of it, let me know who you'd want to start instead of these guys, and we could switch it out. And I kind of try to address that in the blog because there's a lot of things that are just so unpredictable. I think it's a good idea to have extra bench spots, IR spots, etc. It's funny because it's not real, managing football, but people take fantasy football seriously, and so if you're gonna, put some money down between friends, might as well take it seriously and try to win.
Yep. Well, look. Anything I do, I'm in it to win. Exactly. A lot of people are like that. You get into fantasy football, you can be best of friends, but you're in it to win it.
Yeah,
right?
You're competitive.
Right. There's no doubt. But this was going to be a weird year. That was kind of hot and cold on whether I wanted to continue or jump in another league. But been so busy, obviously, with the radio show moving to a new station. I just said, look, I'll just take this year off with the rest of the guys. But I'll be honest with you, I am missing it.
Yeah,
I am missing it.
I took the year off from the Survivor League, but I might jump back into that next year.
There you go. Let's talk Pelicans first with the big breaking news yesterday that Stan Van Gundy is the new head coach of the New Orleans Pelicans, their 7th head coach. He's agreed to terms, a 4-year deal. He's had 12 years as an NBA head coach, from 2003 to 2018. He's been with Turner Broadcasting the last year. Former head coach of the Miami Heat 03 to 06, the Orlando Magic 07 to 12, and then the Detroit Pistons, where he was also, again, the president of basketball operations and handled all the personnel as well as head coach from 2014 to 2018. 523 and 384 record. That's 577. Winning percentage, been in the playoff 8 times with a 48 and 43 record. That's a 527 winning percentage. And of course, he made it to the finals with the Magic in 2009. He's been to the Eastern Conference Finals in 2005 with the Heat, and then 2010 with the Magic. He's considered a defensive-minded coach, a guy that can adjust on the fly, a very cerebral coach, but a very emotional coach as well, a guy that can fire up a team, and a guy that again, a lot of people believe that it can take a young team and make them better. Where he has gone, again, he's made teams better for the most part, especially on the defensive end, where he's had teams going in the top 10 everywhere he's gone. And of course, he's also had to deal with superstars pretty much everywhere he's gone as well. Shaq, Dwayne Wade, Dwight Howard, you go right down the line there. He wasn't my first choice, okay? I mean, I like Doc Rivers and I like Billy Donovan. Those guys were gone. But as a third choice, I don't know if they could have done much better. Kenny Atkinson was a guy that also I liked as well, but I have no issue with Van Gundy. The only thing is, Chris, that I heard him on ESPN radio on the Le Batard show a few weeks ago, and he was talking about how much he enjoyed retirement and his grandkids, didn't want to get back in the grind of the NBA, and then lo and behold, a few weeks later, he's the new head coach of the New Orleans Pelicans. Why don't you give me your synopsis on what you think about Van Gundy as a coach coming over, the process? Throw it out there.
Well, I think to address what you said last, what I heard following that was that being in the bubble and calling some of those games, and I think that was a really intense basketball environment. It was a basketball fans' basketball dream, and I think that's kind of what got him back into wanting to coach and wanting to be with a team, and being in there where it was straight basketball every day, multiple games a day. Like if there's anything that could kind of wake that coaching need up inside of you, I think that's what it did with Stan Van Gundy. Like some of the other guys that you mentioned that might have been your preference, a Doc Rivers or a Billy Donovan, I think Van Gundy is another guy like those two who's established in his way.
Yes.
And I say that in a good way because I think he knows what he wants to do. He knows how to take advantage of personnel. And I don't think he's a coach that is going to try and make a square peg fit into a round hole. He's not going to take a roster that might not excel in one area and try and make it what he had in Miami or what he had in Detroit or what he had in Orlando. He's a guy that's going to take the personnel he has and make the best out of him. And I think one of the best examples of that was what he did in Orlando. And I was reading up on it earlier, and the way that the NBA's played now, the Magic and what they did during his best years in Orlando, what they did is kind of forgotten. He was a big part of, the constant three-point shooting we see now.
Yep.
I think they were averaging like 26 a game or something like that, which was high at the time. It's not very high right now, but he did that because of the personnel he had, because he had a guy like Dwight Howard who demanded such attention in the post, and then he could kick out to shooters, and he had shooters. And so what he said afterward was he didn't do that because he felt like that was just this game-changing philosophy that has kind of swept through the NBA now, but because that's the personnel he had. And so I think he's going to come to the Pelicans and evaluate what he has, and clearly he impressed David Griffin and the upper management and the front office of what vision he saw with this roster and how to best take advantage of it. And it's a signal to me, this hire in Stan Van Gundy, that he knows what he wants to do to win now. It's not about this overhaul and player development, or you probably would have had a Kenny Atkinson. It's about taking advantage of what this roster has right now, and I think that's the ability to win, but it's still a really tough Western Conference, but he still sees this team as one that can compete right away.
You and I were talking before the show, and I mentioned this on the radio show yesterday when it was announced that, again, he had become the next head coach of the Pelicans. A couple things stuck out to me. Number one, defensive-minded coach. This team didn't play defense last year. Another thing, structure. As we were discussing, got a lot of kids that are coming out of college, coming out of high school, going to college. It's a one-year deal. So basically, again, they get into a structure within a college setting, and then you go to the pros. And in Gentry's system, it was more freelance. And, again, especially on offense, you got a shot, you take it, it's open, you take it. I think, again, especially with a very young team, you need structure on the offensive side of the ball. You need a team that is going to play defense, especially in the NBA. People talk about how it's become an offensive game in the NBA, but you look at the playoffs. To be able to win in the playoffs, you've got to be able to play defense in the NBA. This is a guy that everywhere he's been, he's raised the level of defense. And then that cachet. He's been a winning coach. He's been to the finals. And as I mentioned as we opened up, again, some of the best in the game he's coached. So again, he knows how to deal with that. I think those are some of the overriding factors in why I think maybe David Griffin went with a Stan Van Gundy over maybe an assistant that was maybe unproven.
Yeah, you mentioned defense, and I think that's what it is about when you get deep in the playoffs. You look at the Lakers, the defense they play. You look at the Heat, who are a shining example of where defense gets you and how to shut down the Bucks and the Celtics and really take it to some of these teams. I think Stan Van Gundy does bring that, and not just as, like you said, kind of like a side project, like, oh yeah, defense is what we're going to do, we're going to address that, but we're going to go on offense, we're going to play fast, it's about no, it's about defense. And then I think especially with this roster and the ability they have, when you talk about Zion scoring around the basket,
yes.
Brandon Ingram's ability to score from anywhere, Lonzo, if he gets his jump shot back, obviously J.J. Redick and some of the others, Drew Holiday can score from anywhere on the court. You've got a team that is talented enough to score offensively. I don't think that will be their problem. They've mentioned that offense naturally comes easier to them, as it probably does to a lot of people,
Sure.
but you've got to establish the mentality. You've got to establish the want to play defense. It's got to be a bit more of your team identity, and they have the ability there as well, just as much as they do offensively. When you talk about Drew Holiday's on-ball defense, Lonzo Ball, I think Zion Williamson can become a better defender than he has. Brandon Ingram brings length to the table. You possibly bring back a Derek Favors. There are guys that can play defense, and the pieces are there. It's just about getting it out of them and really committing to that. And I think that's what Stan Van Gundy brings that has to be attractive.
Right. You mentioned before, again, from an offensive standpoint, look, he's had Shaq. He's had Dwight Howard. So he's had big guys that are going to have a lot of attention in the paint. That is where Zion is going to be. He also raised the game of like Rashard Lewis and Jameer Nelson when he was in Orlando. You look at Brandon Ingram and you look at a little guy like Rashard Lewis, same body type. Again, you have a vision there. So again, his ability to be able to, as you mentioned, work with what he has, and that's not his system, but it's a system that fits the team itself. And then you've seen examples of, again, how he's raised the play of players that he's inherited, or again, players that he's brought on his rosters.
Yeah, those comparisons you make certainly make Stan Van Gundy look great as his choice, just because he's had familiar personnel. And again, they have the ability to do that offensively, and to have a system where Zion has space to work in the paint, where you can kick out to Ingram, where they move the ball well. I mean, there were some real flashes of brilliance with this team.
Yes.
They still had their issues, obviously, defensively, but there were some real flashes offensively in some games that they played really good basketball. Maybe they just didn't finish the job, or maybe they came out just sleepwalking to start, which was a constant problem under Gentry that you'd like to see fixed. But you saw the upside that this team has when Zion and Ingram and Drew and Lonzo are all on the floor and all in a rhythm together. And I think with that upside and ability, and Stan's ability to get this team to pay attention to the small things, to not take possessions off on defense, to stay mentally locked in, there's real upside to close out some games with good defense that leads to better offense.
Yes.
And I think this team might be surprised when they see the better defense you play, the easier offense becomes, because you're out and running, you're making plays off of missed shots, you're out and running off of missed shots, rather than trying to force the action off of the other team making layups and you're just training layup for layup, layup for three, and wearing yourself out.
He's a big personality too. He's a guy that I think the fans will fall in love with. He's got his players back. He's very vocal. He's got, again, you can see him on the sidelines. He's not a guy that just sits there and he's quiet. He's up, again, he's very vocal on the floor. And then it kind of leads you to the roster itself. A lot of discussion, I've had it on this show, on the radio show, about the future of J.J. Redick and Drew Holiday on this roster. Drew Holiday is going into the last year of his deal with a player option. It is the last year of J.J. Redick's deal, and both guys would fetch something on the trade market that could really help this team maybe down the line. I think that bringing a Van Gundy in now probably signals that both these guys are staying with this club this year, and they're going to try to win now.
Yeah, and I think that's what fans want to see, and I think that's what the organization wants to see. It's, I think the deal with the Lakers and Anthony Davis and getting, the draft picks for the future and the players that you acquired, the draft picks for the future, I guess I would say come as lagniappe. Like, that's good to have and good to have in your pocket and can obviously help you, whether you need to trade up, whether you want to add talent through the draft, whatever you want to do. But the ultimate goal should be winning now, because for so long it feels like even when the Pelicans have had steps forward with just 2 playoff appearances with Anthony Davis, it felt like you always took a step back, and I think everyone's tired of seeing that. And so Van Gundy brings the chance to finally take a step forward and keep taking steps forward. Like you mentioned, I think J.J. Redick is a guy that has sung Van Gundy's praises and is a guy that would be inclined to stick around because of that, and the Pelicans should want to keep around. Same with Drew Holiday. I think that they can be sold on a vision for the future as well, and hopefully you have the start of something, a solid run with the players that we saw tons of upside with, and you continue to see them grow under Stan Van Gundy.
Chris, I don't know if it's the right hire, okay, but I will say this. I think it checks all the boxes that you were looking for in a coach. Defensive-minded, a guy that, again, has had success in the NBA, has cachet because of his success. He's a guy that immediately when he walks in the room, he's going to be respected by players, even young players that maybe, again, don't know the history of the NBA based on what he's done. And, of course, again, the players that he's coached and has success with. So, I think that looking at it just on paper, I think it checks all the boxes. Now, whether he can be successful is a big question mark down the line here. But I think based on what was out there, it's probably the best they could have done.
Well, you had to try to come as close to nailing it as you could.
Right.
I know there's some young, attractive assistant coaches out there that might have been sexier picks, and could you really afford to do that and miss?
Right.
If you're David Griffin, because we've been drinking the David Griffin Kool-Aid for a year and a half now,
right.
And how much he sold us on Drew being this leader that kind of flopped, and Alvin Gentry being the guy, and how many times did he reference 2010 Phoenix Suns and bringing that back, flopped. You don't want to see that happen again, and
right.
Van Gundy, I think, is the guy that comes in and can at least steady the ship and does have plenty of upside as a coach with this team, and that's ultimately what you wanted to do, is be on stable ground sooner than later and then build sooner than later. I think Van Gundy's that guy.
Yeah, and look, now you turn your attention out. The coach is out the way. What's going to happen with the staff? How much of the present staff will be retained, because they do have a good staff. Obviously he's going to want to bring his own staff in that he feels comfortable with. And then the draft. Pelicans have 4 picks in the draft. They have a first-round pick at 13, then they have 3 second-round picks. Look, they don't have enough room for all these picks. So I clearly believe they're going to use those picks as assets to be able to try to bring in maybe one player or maybe a veteran player down the line. Your thoughts?
Yeah, bring in a veteran player, use them as trade capital,
right.
and maybe move up a pick or two.
Sure.
As far as the staff, I think maybe the beauty of a coach that's been out of coaching for a couple of years is he doesn't have a staff he was just working with, and he's kind of had a chance to sit back and see the landscape of the NBA and identify maybe the guys he likes. If you look it up, he's had all kinds of at least a couple interviews on podcasts and whatnot, talking about the Pelicans and talking about what he likes and what he didn't like and where he sees the need to improve. So I think he's got an idea of obviously the personnel, and as far as the staff, I think he would know who he wants to retain. And yeah, there's certainly good options here. It just depends on what happens elsewhere, and there are a lot of other staffs being put together as well.
Yes. Well, Chris Finch was in line for the Indiana job. That didn't happen. There's a lot of talk he may go with Nick Nurse up in Toronto. You talk about Bizdelsdik. Obviously, he's a good defensive coach. Who knows what's going to happen there? But there are two young assistants on that team right now that I think that the organization covets, and that's Jameel McMillan and Fred Vincent.
Yeah, and those are guys that I think, like you mentioned, have kind of established themselves in their personality with the team and with the organization that they would want to keep around. And I'd imagine that, obviously that was part of the discussion in hiring Stan Van Gundy and what he thinks of those guys. So I think the organization does have a bit of say there, obviously, and those would be guys that you would want to keep around.
Yep, no doubt. Overall, good hire?
Good hire. When you look at the guys that were off the market and the guys that were still on the market, and the fact that I just don't think Tyronn Lue would have been the right fit, and it just felt like he was feeling out the waters, but always going to go with the Clippers.
I agree.
I like Stan Van Gundy.
Let's shift to Tulane. Tulane 2-3, 0-3 within the conference. Lost a heartbreaker to number 16 now, ranked SMU 37-34. First of all, you can't turn the ball over in overtime.
Nope.
I mean, that's a mortal sin. You can't do that. But they played well enough to win. After what I saw against Houston, again, the game before, where they were completely outclassed in terms of athletes, the speed of Houston, and just the athletes they put on the field, I was looking for a massacre against SMU. It was not that way at all. They hung with SMU 4 quarters and into that 5th quarter as well. Pratt, as a freshman, he's had his moments, but again, you got to like what he's done thus far. The running game has been there for them. They've had some receivers, that have stepped up as well. I do believe the offensive line's got to get better. But if anything, the big question mark's been, again, is this defense has got to step up and play like the reputation that they felt like they were having coming in. To watch wide receivers running free, it reminds me of LSU and the Saints. Like it's almost contagious.
It's a Louisiana epidemic.
It really is.
Man, we got 2 pandemics.
I mean, Monroe's supposed to be the best corner on that team right now, and again, every time I turn around, somebody's going by him. They got killed on 3rd down, against SMU. Talk a bit about this Tulane Green Wave team and where they are right now.
Well, I was like you. I watched the SMU-Memphis game and saw what that Mustangs offense did, and I was like, oh, man, Tulane's in trouble because they will dice you up. But they did a good job. I think Willie Fritz nailed it. If you listening to him before the SMU game, just how to play against Shane Buechele and not let him extend plays and do too much moving around in the pocket. And they did a good job. The problem was literally every time Tulane scored, they allowed an SMU response. And the defense gave up a lot of chunk plays. The wide receiver pass, and it was like the Tulane scores in the opening drive. Then they allow just a simple curl to the tight end and all kinds of run after catch into Tulane territory. The next play, it's a SMU touchdown. It's those kind of lapses. It's tackling. It's bad angles in pursuit. It's a lot of things in this defense that are killing them.
Yes.
And like it's a bad problem that has constantly hurt them, and it's why they're 0-3 in these games. They let Navy have their way moving the ball down the field in the air, and they had a 24-point lead.
Right.
These are things that if they limit, at minimum they're 1-2 in the conference, maybe 2-1, where they should be. And so if you want to take steps forward as a program, it's about shoring that up and making sure that's not the issue. If anything, I thought would be the issue. I thought it would be the freshman quarterback and some of the issues offensively and injuries with Tyjae Spears going down. But look, that's about, minus the turnover in overtime, that's about all you could ask for from Michael Pratt.
I agree.
The numbers aren't perfect, but what you look for from a quarterback is someone who leads the offense and allows the offense to execute at its best, and he's doing that.
Yes.
If it's not him, it's the running backs, but he's doing enough as a quarterback to get the ball in the playmaker's hands, and that's all you could ask for. It's just 34 points at home should be enough to win, even against SMU, and certainly when you give that kind of performance, you hate to see a loss.
Yeah, I agree with you. As far as Pratt goes, the first thing that really sticks out to me, it's not too big for him. Again, he's moved in as a true freshman. He doesn't seem flustered at all. Seems to make the right decisions most of the times. Minus that interception, obviously in overtime, which kind of sealed the deal for SMU. But as far as that goes, look, I think he's played well, and look, he's got talent.
Yeah.
You could see he's got a gun for an arm.
The guy's he converted a 3rd and 39, and he runs a touchdown in on the same drive. He has allowed us to learn some of these Tulane receivers because Keon Howard wasn't even getting them the ball. I do think that Tulane as a whole has done better with getting the receivers involved. When you watch Keon Howard struggle against Navy, there's a lot of passes to tight ends and Amari Jones at running back and guys who weren't your receivers that were dropping balls. And I know it was rainy, but get the ball to the receivers, the guys who were brought there to catch the ball, and I think you'll see more success in Jaquan Jackson and Michael Jones, the Watts twins. They have been a bit better offensively, and you mentioned it with Pratt. Nothing seems too big.
Right.
I know talking with the team last spring, one of the things they really liked about him, and especially getting him in early, was he's I believe a championship-winning quarterback coming from Florida, and is ready for the big moment. And so you can't knock what they've done there. It's just the rest of the team has to be there and support their freshman quarterback.
The big question mark that going into the season was quarterback, but again, right now that seems to be solved. The thing you didn't think was going to be a question mark was the defensive line, and they have not been really living up to the billing that we saw in the preseason. Between the Johnson brothers, okay, you talk about Sample. I mean, they got some really good players on this defensive line right now, and then you get to the second level, again, fairly good linebackers. The real big question mark is the secondary, where they've been shredded. Yeah,
they've been shredded, and it's got to work hand in hand. And at times the pass rush has been there, at other times it hasn't.
Right.
And when it hasn't, and when you give a guy like Shane Buechele time to throw, that's what happens. And so that's what's been disappointing. And it's been a problem week after week. Even if they solve it one drive, it seems like they give up a big play the next. You've got to make teams earn their way down the field and not give up the chunk plays. And like you said, you certainly can't afford to give up the plays where somebody's running wide open behind the secondary and making big plays like Houston and SMU did in the big moments. That's been the big difference. It hasn't been offense. It hasn't been scoring. They've done well enough there. But if you don't stop giving up the big plays, you can end up in the same boat as LSU. You end up in the same boat as where the Saints have been. It almost, again, they're getting turnovers, okay, but that is just being negated by these big chunk plays that just kind of negate, but would turn the ball over and being able to get these takeaways. Central Florida now on tap. That's going to be a tough test for this defense. Yeah, it's a good conference. It really is. I mean, you talk about SMU and Memphis and Houston and UCF. These are teams that can all be in the top 25 any given week. They certainly play like it. They certainly have the experience of playing in big-time games. And Tulane's faced them enough times now to know what to expect, to know the talent that these teams have. And I think Tulane, in certain areas, has the talent to match them. It's just about execution. And I'm sure it's got to be frustrating because I love what they've done. Philosophy-wise, I think Willie Fritz is a great coach. I think Will Hall's a great offensive coordinator, but certain things they can't get out there and do. They can't get out there and tell you to hang on to the football. They can't get out there and cover and not, blow assignments and I think the coaches have put the guys in a successful enough place to win. They just need to execute. That's what it comes down to. And that was going to be my next question, because there are some Tulane fans out there right now that are a little bit impatient based on, again, where they feel they should be. I look at Willie Fritz and I'm saying, Tulane, be happy you got this guy and you can hold on to him because we've seen so many successful coaches at Tulane move on to other programs. He flirted with a couple programs last year at the end of the season. That didn't come to fruition for him. But there are some fans out there that feel like, we're tired of the little engine that could. We want to see Tulane get over the hump here and be a consistent winner. And they're not wrong. I mean, you go from where you started with Fritz to a couple 500 seasons and you get bowl game wins, and the next step, I don't know if it's, contending for a conference, but it is at least winning 7 or 8 games, and it's playing better in the big games. And I remember a year ago when they went to Memphis, and we put so much on that game, like this is a chance where Tulane can really take a hold of their division and prove they belong and knock off Memphis, and they get run out of the building. That didn't happen necessarily against SMU, a team who I thought could beat them down. They played better, but you had a chance to win, so win.
Right.
You know, you didn't play that well in the second half against Houston, and I think that's where the frustration comes is not necessarily the total wins, but beating the teams that you have on the ropes, like a Navy, and proving that you can belong with some of those bigger teams and beating the SMUs and beating the Memphises and beating the Houstons. I know they've beaten Houston in the past, but there's more there that they can accomplish from an optics standpoint. You don't want to be that, like you said, the little engine that could
No,
anymore.
that's true. Jack Curtis's defense has got to step up as well. I mean, that was what they hung their hat on going into this season, feeling again that defense would carry them, and it just hasn't happened, especially that defensive line. There are guys that are going to play on Sunday that are on that defensive line right now, and they're not playing up to their capabilities.
Yep, you got to bring it out of them. They've got to be, I don't know if it's motivated, I don't know what the issue is, but the talent is there.
Yes, there's no doubt.
You just got to see it in the right moments, in the big moments. A sack here or there, a big play here or there can change the outcome of some of these close games because they've been close.
Yep, no doubt. Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports is our guest. When we come back from hearing from our underwriters, we're going to talk about the Saints and LSU. So stick around. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll be right back.
Air conditioning, heating, and refrigeration has been family owned and operated since 1989. Burkhardt has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhardt's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhardt's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhardt's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports is our guest today. Saints take on the Panthers in the Dome on Sunday. Saints are 3-2 coming out of the bye week. A bye week that was, normally you'd say a bye week early like that. You don't want to get into it. Perfect bye week for the Saints. They needed it badly. 3,000 season ticket holders will be in the Dome on Sunday. In the month of November, 6,000 season ticket holders will be allowed in the Dome. And then we get to December, 15,000 season ticket holders will be allowed in the Dome. Now, this is contingent upon COVID-19 not having an outbreak. Right now, the city is 1.1% infection rate, one of the lowest infection rates in all of the country, especially even when you talk about a major city. So at least the Saints and the Cantrell administration have come together, and at least there's going to be fans in the stands on Sunday. Also, the return of Michael Thomas, which is going to be huge for this team as well. Talk a bit about the Michael Thomas situation. Again, it was listed on the injury report yesterday with an ankle and hamstring. Of course, the disciplinary situation after the fight with C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Look, he's never been thought of to be a cancer in this locker room. Now, all of a sudden, people are tagging him with the cancer label. I think it's far from that. I just think he's an emotional player, and you're going to get what you get. And look, we know the wide receiver position has turned into a diva position. There's no other way around it. It is what it is now.
Well, that's the biggest nightmare you have as probably a general manager when you pay a receiver $20 million or any second contract. You're like, please don't turn into the divas we've seen of the past. And I don't think Michael Thomas has outwardly that much, but certainly as Jeff Duncan had in his column in The Athletic, like there are issues that they've had with Michael Thomas, and even as someone that's been in that locker room doing interviews in years past, it hasn't always been an easy interview or an easy guy to talk to, and we're never asking him about anything difficult. It's always, Mike, you had a great game, and sometimes he can't be bothered. That said, though, his production is missed on the field. Hopefully the hamstring injury isn't serious, because as we've seen across the league, Kenny Golladay, Devontae Adams, a number of others, those hamstring injuries are not easy to come back from. So hopefully he's ready, and they could certainly use him. I think that's been a big thing that's kind of thrown the offense off pace.
I agree.
Is not having Michael Thomas out there. So the bye, as you said, did come at the right time to get that ankle injury taken care of, hopefully back above 90%, and here comes the hamstring. But they need him on the field. They need him there mentally as well. And I think that's the best part of this bye, is kind of a reset button for everybody. Let's get back to the team we know we can be, the team that expects to be a Super Bowl contender.
His absence has opened up the door for other players, though. Again, we've seen Traquan Smith excel. We've seen Callaway in a short amount of time being able to excel, especially with Deontay Harris out. So again, other players have had an opportunity, and Sanders now getting a feel and getting a grasp of the offense. So when he comes back, all of a sudden you start talking about maybe a team that maybe some people were saying were devoid of weapons. No, now you got guys that now feel much more comfortable within the system.
Well, there's another level to this offense. I truly believe that. I truly believe that when you get Michael Thomas back, and the coverage is slanted toward him, there's even more that Sanders can do. There's more that Jared Cook can do. There's less attention teams can pay to Alvin Kamara, but you need it. And I get what you're saying, and I agree that Sanders has flourished in recent weeks. It's nice to see Marquez Callaway. Excellent to see Traquan Smith show up. But you need to find that next level. The Saints, we've talked about issues within this offense, and they're averaging 30 points per game. And as Jared Cook said in an interview the other day, that's cool, but scoring's up league-wide. 30 points per game isn't necessarily winning you games. And so they need to find that next level in the offense, and I think that's what Michael Thomas brings them.
I would like to see more of a commitment to the run, and that's we've been talking about that for forever with Peyton. 25 rushes against the Chargers, 42 rushes against the Lions. Look, I don't think you can realistically look at 42 rushes every week, but you'd like to be in that 20-30 range, and you'd like to have some balance with the passing. Maybe having the passing play off the run, as opposed to what we see in the past, where the run is played off the pass with this team.
I think they've done a better job of it. I do commend them for the job that they did in Detroit, getting down by 14 early, but fortunately it was early enough where clearly the game plan was to run the football, and they did that, and they executed. And then in the second half, you started to see some of the things open up at the second level for Emmanuel Sanders. Even against the Chargers have an excellent defense, man. They really played well against the Saints, and without having to necessarily load the box, were able to slow them down running the football. But the Saints at least made them respect it. They at least, made them realize we're going to keep giving it to Murray. We're going to keep handing it off to Kamara. You can't totally pin your ears back and come after us. But they need to, like you said, they got to stick with that. They got to, stay in Sean Payton's ear. Hey, we got Latavius Murray. Let's run the football, because when they get going, they can really get going. And especially over this next bit of the schedule, this week, you talk about a Panthers defense that certainly isn't what we used to see from Ron Rivera with Luke Kuechly and some of the other guys there. This is a vulnerable team that you can run the ball against and then get the play action going, especially if they have Michael Thomas back. But even if they don't, I think there's a real ability to establish the run and set up the play action after it. And once you have that going, that's where this offense starts to really thrive. In
the grand scheme of things, the offense is not the issue with this team, though.
No,
okay?
not at all.
It is on the defensive side of the ball. And that was something that was thought that was not going to be. But, we're not seeing them being a swarming defense. I watched Tampa over the weekend against Green Bay, and I see a defense that is swarming. When the Saints have been at their best on the defensive side of the ball, they are a swarming defense. They're a physical defense. We haven't seen that thus far this season.
No. Outside of really C.J. Gardner-Johnson and how he's played against the run, no one in that secondary has been perfect, and a lot of them have been far from perfect. It's been disappointing because you bring back most of the same personnel as far as linebackers in your secondary, minus A.J. Klein and Von Bell, but You draft a guy like, you bring in a guy like, you have Alex Anzalone back off of injury, and then you bring in Malcolm Jenkins in the secondary. So I think that's what's been disappointing, is because even though Jenkins was new to that secondary, they talked about how the communication was high and how he's teaching other safeties these different things that he's learned throughout his experience, and it hasn't shown up on the field, not only from a playmaking standpoint, but it's been the opposite of giving up big plays and a lot of plays downfield, and Marshawn Lattimore just getting leaky at times, and Malcolm Jenkins not being able to cover tight ends well, and that's what has to be better with this team. When the Saints were at their best a year ago, when some of the games when Drew Brees wasn't there and they were playing great under Teddy Bridgewater, was because that defense was playing so well, and they kept playing well once Drew Brees came back, and that's what allowed them to really be a strong team. And even in 2018, the offense kind of tailed off toward the end of the year, and they played some great defense down the stretch. That's where this team has to be the contending team that they want to.
I think that when you look at the defense, and this is Dennis Allen, okay, this is not a brand new coordinator. This coordinator's been here for a while. The system's been in place for a while. The 99% of that team has played this system over the last few years. You should not have the bust that you're seeing right now. I could deal with getting physically beat, okay? The guy across from you is a professional as well. But there is no excuse for players that have been in this defense this long to have the type of bust that they're having, where they don't know their responsibilities each and every play.
I think part of it is I think they kind of fell in love with some of the personnel they had and the versatility. Like, that's what we love to talk about during training camp is C.J. Gardner-Johnson and the different places you can play him, and P.J. Williams and the fact that he can be a nickel corner or he can drop back and play some safety. Patrick Robinson can play inside and has played outside a little bit with guys injured. But just because they can play those different roles is that their best role. And that's what this team has to identify and put guys in the best position. You talk about the bus and the 64-yarder to Mike Williams that I believe it was P.J. Williams at safety on that side and just wasn't in the right spot. And Patrick Robinson was the guy that everybody blamed, but I think he was playing the right coverage. And he didn't have the safety help behind him that should have been there. It's things like that can't happen, but I know P.J. Williams can play safety, but he's the best guy to be there at that moment.
Right.
What did you bring in Malcolm Jenkins for? What do you have Marcus Williams for? These are the guys that you want in the safety position. If you're going to play a two-deep safety, maybe not have P.J. Williams there. But again, just because you have the ability to move these guys around, you need to put them in their best position to excel.
Winning football teams, winning defense means that, again, you're winning in the red zone and you're winning on third down. This team is not consistently doing that.
No, they haven't. It's a league problem. It feels like teams get in the red zone and they're scoring. I could probably count on one hand how many times I've watched a football game and seen teams kick field goals in the red zone. But that's where you got to be better, and that's where this team has the ability to be better. This whole defense is kind of built on not just a guy like Cam Jordan and some of the in your front seven being able to create pressure, but the fact that you can bring additional pressure, and Dennis Allen can afford to blitz because he's got Janoris Jenkins and Marshawn Lattimore. I know Jenkins hasn't been healthy, but especially when you get in the red zone and you want to bring drives to an end and get sacks and knock teams out of field goal range, whatever, you got to rely on Lattimore. You got to rely on Jenkins or whoever's playing corner to be able to be out there on an island and make plays, and that's where it's been disappointing. And the last time out we see him against the Chargers and Justin Herbert's just throwing dimes down there to Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. That's where this team has to be better.
And again, they got to be better at covering the tight end, and they got to be better on the crossing routes. The crossing routes has been an Achilles heel for this team forever. They just don't play the crossing routes well. As far as the tight end goes, Kiki Alonso is going to be coming off the PUP list. Maybe he's the answer there. They try to get Jamie Collins in the offseason. That didn't work out. Zach Bond doesn't look like he's going to be a guy that can cover tight ends. He got a little bit of time in the last game, more in the run. He's more of a pass rushing type linebacker. They got to figure that out. Look, the trading deadline is just around the corner. I believe it's November the 3rd. I'm wondering if they're not going to take a look at somebody on that second level that can cover a tight end, or again can help them in terms of coverage.
I think you got to go back to C.J. Gardner-Johnson on tight ends more. I think that's where he had success as a rookie, minus a few plays, but I think he's played well enough there. Malcolm Jenkins didn't get it done. They tried to Mario Davis on Hunter Henry a couple times. He gave up a couple catches. So I think you go with the guy who's done it best, and Gardner-Johnson is a guy who's rangy enough to, I think, cover some of the more athletic tight ends that you'll face. You got Jimmy Graham coming up with the Bears in a couple weeks. Rob Gronkowski they'll face again, who will probably have a bigger role this time.
No doubt.
But it hasn't gotten done with other guys, and that's been a huge problem.
Yep. Hopefully, again, you're seeing Jenkins come back healthy. Lattimore played the last game injured. You could see it. He didn't have the burst. He didn't have the catch-up speed. Hopefully, again, the week off has helped him in terms of getting his hamstring right. But the secondary's got to play much better down the stretch here. Now, look, Davenport coming back, I think it helps him in terms of getting pressure on the quarterback. It gives them a little bit of a rotation opposite Cam Jordan. But also, again, those guys in the middle, last year when the Saints were playing really good defense, the push was coming from the middle, stopping the run and attacking the quarterback.
Yeah, interior pressure and getting up under a quarterback and not letting them climb up in the pocket. That's where they had a lot of success, and that's why I think, I think it was 2 years ago that Rankins had his best year with 8.5 sacks. But when you've got Cam Jordan coming in and Rankins, in there as well up the middle, and you can add a guy like not just Marcus Davenport, but Trey Hendrickson's played really well.
Yes, no doubt.
That's where they can really create havoc and put pressure on these quarterbacks, and that is a big part of them being more successful. And I think the next couple weeks, you can get some mistakes out of Teddy Bridgewater applying pressure. You can definitely get some mistakes out of Nick Foles, a guy that they've seen a good bit the last few years. And then obviously you're going to have to play one of your best games against Tom Brady, because that Bucs team is looking better and better every week.
No doubt. This week, you mentioned Carolina comes to town, Joe Brady, and also Teddy Bridgewater. Bridgewater knows this team. He knows the tendencies of the players on defense. He knows their strengths, their weaknesses. It's like training camp. Training camp is fool's gold because, again, cerebral players, smart players, veteran players understand the calls, the offense, or the defensive calls, what's going on, what the team is trying to do. Again, the strengths and weaknesses of the players they're playing against. Bridgewater has all that, that knowledge. Joe Brady has knowledge of this offense, what Peyton likes to do. He's been in those meetings. He knows what Peyton likes to do at a certain situation. So from that standpoint, you're looking at a situation where you got guys that kind of understand the nuances of what's going on with the Saints. On the flip side, Peyton also knows. And this team knows Teddy Bridgewater. They know Joe Brady by now. The offense, if you look at the offense they're running in Carolina right now, kind of mirrors what the Saints are doing. So, they understand. They self-scout themselves. They know what works against them. It'll be an interesting matchup this weekend.
Yeah, it works both ways. They know each other well. I think the thing when it comes to Bridgewater and the Panthers in this offense, you can't fall asleep on the Panthers just because they don't have the big names. Right. It's DJ Moore and it's Robbie Anderson.
But they're good.
But they are good, and they have connected with Teddy Bridgewater, especially Robbie Anderson. That's his guy. It's clear that they worked well together in the offseason, and he has been a huge surprise and a huge boost to that team. Mike Davis has played well.
He really has.
And as a fantasy football guy, I've seen those numbers. Mike Davis has played well in place of Christian McCaffrey. This is a team that they know how they want to move the football, and they've become effective with it. It could be a high-scoring game because, like I mentioned earlier, I don't think that Panthers defense necessarily has the juice, but you've got to be aware of where Teddy wants to go with the football and try to take that away. He certainly has the weapons outside, and if Lattimore and Jenkins and the secondary don't have their A game, it could be a long day because Bridgewater's got the arm strength to push it down the field, and he's got the receivers to make plays down the field.
All right. Normally you'd like to have the bye a little bit later. It came early. I think it came at the right time for this team that needed to kind of reset, get healthy. What do you anticipate happening the rest of the season? Does this team turn it around? Do they kick it off like they normally do after September, get in October, November, where again they're hard to beat, and this is a team that is going to contend for the NFC Championship and also the Super Bowl, as well as, look, I think it's going to be a dogfight in the NFC South with Tampa Bay as well.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think this is a team that does turn it around. For better or worse, they've tended to play to the level of their opponents. So if their opponent's playing at a high level, I think they will as well. I don't see them ever being in a situation where they're getting blown out. But I do think when you get Michael Thomas back, when you get healthier on defense, which hopefully they've been able to do over the bye week, they're more equipped to win these close games. And that's what I expect to see from the Saints team. They're going to play some tough competition. They're going to play winning teams like the Bears and the Bucks and the Chiefs down the road. They're going to have to raise the level of their play in these tight games. But I expect them to do that. I think there's too much. I don't know if I keep leaning on this crutch too much, but I do think there's too much leadership, there's too much experience to let this opportunity go.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they're going to turn it around. I will be shocked if they don't turn it around. Now, again, if something was to happen to Breeze, that's a whole different story. But I do believe they'll turn it around. LSU, I don't know if I'm on that turnaround bandwagon yet. They're 1-2, South Carolina on tap. 3 bad teams they played so far. I mean, Mississippi State is a bad team, Vanderbilt's a bad team, and Missouri is a bad team, and they're 1-2. Now you got the guy who has been kind of the shining light for the team in Miles Brennan, who's played terrific as quarterback, especially after the first week, who's got that torn abdomen near his hip, which is an injury that cannot be surgically repaired. It's going to have to take time to heal. And look, we know the quarterback, the torque comes from again, your midsection, your lower body when you're trying to throw the football. So every time he moves, or he's going to have that pain. His threshold of pain is going to be able to tell on when he's going to be able to come back. So now, the scenario that you didn't want to go to, even in the COVID-19 world, 2 freshmen now will be taking the snaps for LSU, Max Johnson and TJ Finley. You had a chance to see TJ Finley in high school. I'd like to get your take on that and then your thoughts on Johnson. And what do you think will happen with this quarterback position?
I do think TJ Finley has taken some serious steps forward. I know he's done a lot of quarterback work in the offseason and even brought in some outside guys to kind of help him. And he's lost the weight. I think he's been in better shape. And I think the biggest thing when a guy like TJ Finley comes from high school to college is in high school, it could be throw on first, second, and third down. You get a couple chances to make that big play happen. In college, you might run first down, run second down, one pass. If it's incomplete, you're off the field. Next time you're back on the field, you might be down by 7. Rinse and repeat, you might be down by 14. So you've got to value every throw and every possession. That's what, not just for Finley, but for any freshman quarterback, that goes for Max Johnson as well, you have to be ready for and you have to be mentally prepared for. You got to be locked in every play. That said, like you mentioned, this is kind of worst case scenario because at least in years past, you could rely on a Dave Aranda defense to, that you wouldn't get in a hole with. Yes. You wouldn't fall you wouldn't fall too far behind with, or you could rely on a running game that, even going back to Les Miles, as bad as those offenses were, they were able to mask years and years of bad quarterback play behind being able to run the football with a number of different backs. LSU's got the backs, but they haven't found the rhythm running the ball, and I don't know whether it's the offensive line and their lack of capability or just your backs and a lack of vision or a lack of touches for the guy who I think is the best one right now, John Emery.
I agree.
That has been the issue, but the quarterback doesn't have much to rely on. And like you said, Miles Brennan's been this beacon for LSU. If it hasn't been for Miles Brennan, those two games that they lost could have been lost by a lot bigger margin. It's just unfortunate that Miles Brennan's had the great games that he has, and they haven't been celebrated properly because they've been so bad defensively.
To your point, 49 yards rushing against Missouri. I mean, just that can't happen. And look, Davis Price, Curry, 2 nice backs. To me, the most dynamic back on that roster is Emery. He's got to be on the field. You got to get him the ball. He's a guy that can take it from the line of scrimmage to a touchdown on any play.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the one thing he's got that the other backs don't have.
Emery was a guy that we all wanted to see as a freshman.
Yes.
Clyde surprised everybody, and fortunately for LSU was the back that could do it all. But Emery was a guy that everybody expected to see at least get a couple more touches. Now, Ed Ogeron mentioned he needed to get bigger and stronger. His pass protection needed to get better, and there were some ball security issues, I suppose. But that's all behind him. And against Vanderbilt, I know it was Vanderbilt, he looked excellent.
He really did.
I think there is so much kind of roster massaging to try and keep guys happy, and you want to predetermine the carries for Curry and Ty Davis-Price and John Emery, but at some point you've got to find the hot hand, and especially when you're in a game where you can't stop anybody and you need to get in the end zone. Like, compare it to the Saints. When they are in a shootout in a game that they got to get points and get down the field every time and score, it's Kamara.
That is,
it's Kamara getting like around 30 touches compared to his usual 15 to 20.
Right.
So you've got to go with the guy that gives you the best chance to get in the end zone, and like you said, it's John Emery Jr.
There's no doubt. Now, the offensive line's got to play better, especially again with freshman quarterbacks. They got to establish the run. But the problem on this team right now is being on the defensive side of the ball. Again, and I've mentioned this all week long. When you get into offenses now that are so complex, and then you're telling your defense you're going to simplify it. I mean, how much can you simplify it and still be able to stop these complex offenses? It's interesting to see, again, what this defense looks like going in against South Carolina, who's playing pretty good football right now, and how much Bo Pelini can simplify the defense going forward. Give me your thoughts on where this defense is.
It's tough because it's not like the NFL where you can go in there and make some wholesale changes and sign some guys and bring in different things. Like you've got who you've got. And with LSU, I think that, based on what we've heard from Ed Ogeron before the season, and he still seems to have faith in Bo Pelini and his guys, they've got the personnel out there that they think can be most successful, but it hasn't been. And there are personnel issues, and I think Jacoby Stevens is even a guy that's been limited in terms of his ability to cover. I think he's good against, when you're running downhill, but you start going side to side, and Jacoby Stevens might be knowledgeable enough and smart enough to know what's happening, but physically, can he make the play? Right. Then you've got a guy like Jabril Cox, who made a great play in a pick six against Mississippi State, but a lot of other times has been out of position. After the Mississippi State game, said he didn't think the SEC was that big of a difference from what he'd seen. It's a little bit faster, and he looks lost at times.
Plus, he was freelancing a lot from what we understand.
Yes, and Damone Clark has been a guy that's disappointed as well. These linebackers look very stiff. They look out of position. They look, once you get going with misdirection, they look like they're a bit lost. I hope simplifying it can help, and maybe it helps in certain scenarios. But like you said, there's so many different personnel groupings and ways that offenses like to get backs involved in the passing game and use tight ends and move wide receivers around from inside to outside, and maybe take your best wide receiver and move him away from Derek Stingley and get a matchup in other places. Missouri took advantage of that.
Yes.
They attacked Jacoby Stevens a couple times. They knew how to attack LSU when they went into zone coverages, and they were busts as well. They knew how to pick on the freshmen. Even Mississippi State, was able to pick on guys like Jay Ward and Cardale Flott and some of the others. There are issues there that LSU's had time to fix, but you don't know if they've gotten fixed until they get back in the game.
I was going to ask you, can they turn this thing around?
Depends on what your definition
is. This is an SEC schedule.
It depends on what your definition of turned around is. I mean, in years past, if they lost to a Florida or a Georgia and they could bounce back against the South Carolina or an Auburn and win that game they weren't supposed to, they've lost to teams that are objectively bad.
Yes.
Mississippi State is bad.
Yes.
Missouri is not good. Vanderbilt, who you beat, is not good. Like, that's the scary part. I was worried with Miles Brennan, like going up against Florida. Miles hadn't faced a defense that could actually really do much to stop him yet, and that's why they were in games. God forbid they face a defense that could actually get to Miles Brennan, and now you have two freshman quarterbacks. I don't know that they turn it around.
Right.
Honestly, I don't.
It's going to be very difficult.
It's going to be tough.
Yep, no doubt about it. Chris, thanks so much for joining us here on the program today. Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports. You can check him out over at Fox 8 and with all their great shows. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program now, 6 o'clock every Thursday night as we go live at 1 p.m. every Thursday. That's on WLAE-TV. There's also a rebroadcast on Thursday night on WLAE-TV 2, The Deuce, at 10 p.m. You can catch us on Friday night, 9 o'clock on Pelican Sports Television, 10 o'clock here on WLAE-TV, and then 2 a.m. on The Deuce, and then back on Pelican Sports Television Saturday at 5 p.m. Also, you can catch me on or you catch all the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports on the WLAE-TV YouTube page and also on my social media platforms, as well as ericasher.com. You can catch me on the radio, 106.1 FM, 4 to 6 p.m. Each and every weekday. You can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. Also, you can check us out at the iHeartRadio app as well as the TuneIn Radio app. And as always, I want to thank Chris Hagan for joining us on the program, and of course the great staff here at WLAE-TV, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Tommy O'Connor, Tommy Fairley, and my director, William Hill. I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.